you'll see a couple examples like this in your homework that are supposedly solving quadratic equations, but it doesn't look like that at first. You'll notice that we have a square root in there. That's not a quadratic. Quadratics don't involve square roots. And so what we're going to do is try to change this thing to make it look a little bit more like we're used to seeing with a quadratic. So want to get rid of this square root. The easiest way to get rid of that is if there's nothing else on the side with it. So first thing is I'm going to subtract the x from both sides, which gives me square root of x equals negative x plus 1. So we want to isolate the square root. Now that we've isolated that square root, what we can do is we can square both sides of this equation to get rid of that square root. So I'm going to square it, and I'm going to square it. On the left-hand side, we just get x. That's what we were kind of hoping for. On this side, we have negative x plus 1 squared. Now the temptation here is always to just go negative x squared plus 1 squared and just leave it at that. But if you do that, you're missing the middle term here. So again, I want you to think about this as if we're foiling this expression. When we foil that expression, what comes out is a middle term. It ends up being, once we've combined things, x squared minus 2x plus 1 when all is said and done. Once we have that, we want to get this into general form. We want to get a 0 on this side, so let's subtract the x over to that side so we have a form of the equation that's a little easier to work with. So then x squared minus 3x plus 1. All right, so we get to this point, and I guess what I would do whenever I'm looking at a quadratic equation is I would try to factor it first. Unfortunately, this one is not factorable, and so we have to use other methods. Now, I told you the other day that we can choose which method we're going to use. When all's said and done, I think probably the easiest one in this case is going to be the quadratic formula. So we're going to set that up, quadratic formula, find out what x is. Now the solution's down here, so not much mystery there, but just how we set this up. So negative b, so that's positive 3 plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. So negative 3 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay. Then we combine things in here. We get 3 plus or minus the square root of, so we have 9 minus 4, so there's going to be a 5 in there, over 2. This isn't a super nice value. This it has a square root involved there, but what we're going to do is just maybe change these into decimals. The solution that I'm saying here, this is technically what the exact solution is, but we should maybe just approximate this. So that's 2.62 as one of the solutions and 0.382 for the other one. You can go ahead and check that if you're punching it in on your calculator. Now this is also a place where I want to just point out something. There are going to be some cases this year where a solution looks like a solution, but it doesn't actually work. That's called an extraneous solution. And in this case, one of these two is extraneous, and we'd find that out only if we're checking both of these. So if we plug them into the original equation up here, so we plug both of those in, the second one's going to work, but the 2.62 is not. So we need to know that because we don't want to have a solution that doesn't actually work in the equation. This one's extraneous. Now, the temptation a lot of people have is to erase this one when they're doing their homework. I'd prefer that you don't. I'd prefer that you just put a big X through it like this so that I know you found it, but then realize that it was extraneous. That tells me a lot more about your process and your thinking than erasing it. But the only solution that we can have here that actually works is this 0.382, and again, you can check that just to make sure, see if it's close enough for your taste.